What's going on, everyone out there? It is the NFL Exporter, and you are listening to the Final Wrap, the official NFL sports talk show, live on DerekShapiroShow.com each and every Tuesday at 7 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. And we recap all of the great NFL and fantasy football action each and every week. So you want to make sure to join me right here on the Derek Shapiro Show. As always, before we get into our first segment, let's make sure you know how to connect with us on our social networks. You can find me, the NFL Exporter, on Twitter at NFLExporter, Facebook.com/NFL Exporter, or you can go to YouTube.com. Click on channels in the search engine, put NFL Exporter, subscribe to my channel. I have tons of great videos up there, a lot of them of shows that I do on a weekly basis. For all the above, that is spelled NFLExporter. You can also find Derek Shapiro on Twitter at Derek Shapiro Show, and show is spelled S-H-O. There is no W on the end. You can also find Derek Shapiro on Facebook.com/Derek Shapiro, and you will see a picture of Derek with former Fugees member Wyclef Jean. To participate in the show, the call-in number is 716-249-0552, or if you would prefer to use email, it's NFLExporter@yahoo.com. Just leave your name, the city and state you're from, your favorite football team, and if you need some fantasy football advice, or you have a comment, or there's something you'd like for me to talk about on the show, just make sure to include that in the email, and I'll be more than happy to include that in one of the show segments. To get the ball rolling today, let's talk about what's trending around the NFL right now. And obviously, we have to start off by congratulating Peyton Manning for becoming the NFL all-time touchdown passing leader. He now has 510. He broke the record this past Sunday night playing against the San Francisco 49ers. So congratulations to Manning. Obviously, anytime that you can be the leader in league history, it's a big deal. This guy, without question, has put in the work over the years. You see it whenever he goes to a team. He just makes that team better. This guy really has set a new standard for quarterbacks in the NFL. I think that we all expect every single game for Peyton Manning to pass for 300 yards and 3 touchdowns at a minimum. And it's something, it's not easy. I can tell you that much. It's not easy, but he certainly makes it look that way. And I think it's a credit to his work ethic, to the time that he spends perfecting his craft. And he's been doing it for a long time. To be 38 years old and still playing at this high of a level, I think it speaks high volumes about Manning, who also is a very durable player, outside of having neck surgery and missing that one season, which is also what makes this record all the more impressive, because Manning broke this record in 56 less games played than Brett Favre, the leader. You factor in he missed an entire season, and I mean, it's just impressive. So Peyton Manning just continues to be the consummate professional, and by the time he's all said and done, that record is going to be very difficult to break. Next, we want to talk about some things going on around the NFL. I'm going to start with the Atlanta Falcons, and this is a team here that I think after this year, it's going to get blown up. You have to understand, in the NFL, windows open and close rather quickly. And without question, the Falcons had maybe about a 3 to 4 year period there where they had a lot of opportunities, and particularly a couple years ago when they came up just short of reaching the Super Bowl. They lost to the 49ers 28-24 in the NFC Championship game. But windows open and close quickly in the NFL. And this is a team who was not able to jump through at a time when it was widest open. You look at this Falcons team right now, and all of their money is tied up into their skill position players, and you certainly understand that. The bulk of the money goes to quarterback Matt Ryan, wide receiver Julio Jones, wide receiver Roddy White, and veteran Steven Jackson. But when you look at this Falcons team as a whole, they've got a ton of work to do, and they're going to probably have to find some ways to maybe restructure some contracts or get some things done, because they don't have the cap room right now to really bring in the players that they need to be successful. When I look at this Falcons team, I'm saying, number one, they can't run the football. They really have not made a concerted effort to do so. And I can certainly understand you feel that Matt Ryan is a top 10 quarterback in this league. He's a guy who should be able to, kind of along with the trend. I mean, you do see Andrew Luck, Peyton Manning, Phillip Rivers. There's a ton of quarterbacks in the NFL right now. Drew Brees, Aaron Rodgers, they're passing the football all over the place. But I don't think that Atlanta has the offensive line to protect Matt Ryan. Losing tackle Sam Baker, it was a big deal because this was a team who last year, very similar problems, simply could not run the football. You become one-dimensional, and at that point, it makes it very easy for defenses to scheme against you. And when your offensive line is not that good, Matt Ryan's going to get harassed and end up on his back a lot, just how we've seen in the Falcons loss this past weekend to the Ravens. Outside of not being able to run the football, which protects your quarterback, it takes time off the clock, gives your offensive lineman into a little bit of a groove. You look on the defensive side of the football, and let's be honest, there's no talent there. You're talking about a defensive line whose best player, no disrespect, is probably Jonathan Babineau. You're looking at a linebacking core. These guys are old. You're asking O.C. Umenyiora and Croy Bierman to play outside linebacker. These guys are defensive ends that they can't play outside linebacker. These guys know how to set the edge, and they can still get after the quarterback a little bit. But when it comes to trying to run down these fast running backs coming around the corner, when it comes to dropping back in coverage to defend running backs and tight ends, that's not their cup of tea. When I see the Falcons move to the 3-4 and Umenyiora and Bierman at outside linebacker, I laughed. It was obvious these guys weren't going to be effective. You lose your best player in middle linebacker Sean Witherspoon to an injury for a year. So on the inside linebackers, you don't have anybody who can stop the run. They're just real weak in their front seven. And then you look at a secondary that is trying to piece it together. You have 2 second-year defensive backs starting, and I don't have too much of a problem with that. Alfred and Trufant, they give a good effort. Now, obviously, they're still learning on the job, but at least they're, going to, each year kind of grow and mature together. But the safety, William Moore, he's a hitter. He can't cover anybody. He doesn't have any speed. And I can't tell you who the other safety is. You let Thomas Deku go. You let Brent Grimes go. Those were a couple good players in their secondary. You let Curtis Lofton go. And so when you look at the pieces that has left Atlanta's defense, which people tend to forget the year that they came up one game short of the Super Bowl, it was a very aggressive defense. People were shocked to see Atlanta's defense in the top 10. But Mike Nolan did an excellent job with that group. But the Falcons right now, they don't look good. They can't win on the road. They're having trouble, winning away games outdoors. And so I think this is a franchise that's in big trouble. I think after this year is over, I don't think they'll make the playoffs. I think you'll see this team blown up. I think that they're going to get rid of their head coach, Mike Smith, and they're going to start looking at some ways while Matty Ice and Julio Jones, who, let's face it, at this point, those are your only 2 good players on your roster. Steven Jackson's on the tail end of his career. Roddy White has maybe another 2 years left. He's an older player. And so you've got to find a way to start stockpiling in some real talent before it gets too late out in Atlanta. Taking a look at the Detroit Lions, I absolutely love this defense. These guys are for real. I was waiting to see when I took a look last week at the teams that they had played. The Lions came in with the number 1 ranked defense. I only seen Aaron Rodgers as the only good quarterback that they had faced, and at the time it was week 3. It was a division foe who Detroit was very familiar with. They always give Rodgers a difficult time. And, at the time, Rodgers really only was in sync with 2 receivers, Jordy Nelson and Randall Cobb. So when I seen Drew Brees coming to town, I said, okay, now here's a real test, because it really wasn't about New Orleans running the football, although I thought they'd do a little better than just 30 yards rushing. But I know that Drew Brees is a quarterback who spreads the football all over the football field. This was 2 straight games where Brees threw the football to 9 different receivers. So at that, when you got a quarterback who's spreading the ball out that much, you really have to cover the entire field. And to be completely honest, this was a game that Detroit really should have lost. Their defense played well, but Drew Brees ate him up in the air. 342, 2 touchdowns. He did have one very key, costly interception at the end of that game. But from what I've seen from Detroit is a dominant defensive line. They just manhandled the Saints up front. The Saints could not get anything going running the football. That makes teams one-dimensional. And again, when you have players like Ndamukong Suh, when you have guys like Nick Fairley, Ezekiel Ansah, these guys know how to get after the quarterback. And so it presented some huge problems for Drew Brees. But, I will say this Detroit Lions defense is official. I was waiting for a game. And, sure, Drew Brees is one of the best quarterbacks in the NFL. There was no question in my mind with how much he throws the football. It was right on my Twitter, my Facebook post, my analysis before the game on Sunday. And I said, Drew Brees throws the ball 40 to 50 times a game. So nobody's shocked to see Drew Brees throw for 300 yards or 2 or 3 TDs. But it was certainly the way that Detroit made it difficult on the Saints to score touchdowns and really didn't allow too many red zone opportunities. So I just wanted to give some kudos to the Lions defense, who they're for real. It's not a fluke. As long as they can stay healthy, this is going to be a unit that could possibly put Detroit over the top in regards to being a threat if they can stop making the silly mistakes that have haunted them over the years and get into the playoffs. So I really like what I've seen out of the Detroit Lions defense. Brandon Marshall, wide receiver of the Chicago Bears, had some real choice words for his teammates after their humiliating loss at home, 27-14, this past Sunday against the Dolphins. And I'm happy that this has been able to get kept in context. A lot of times when it's not a quarterback who is getting in the face of his players, his teammates, I should say, and being loud and vocal, it gets taken as the player is out of control. He's a distraction. He shouldn't be doing that. It's unprofessional. But again, if you see Tom Brady or Peyton Manning or one of these guys getting in their players' faces, then it's okay. He's being a leader. And so I'm happy that this didn't get taken out of context. And Brandon Marshall's right. What he said was basically the Bears, who are 3-4, it's not good enough. It's not acceptable. When he looks around that locker room and sees the talent that they have, and he took accountability. He said it starts on my side of the football. He didn't point the finger at the defense. He said, guys on my side of the football, we're not getting it done. There's no way with myself, with Alshon Jeffrey, with Matt Forte, with Martellus Bennett, that these guys should be coming out and only putting up 14 points. It's inexcusable. And he's absolutely right. There's no reason that Bears team should be playing this inconsistent. They haven't won a home game all year, and it's inconsistent play, and so he was right. And you know what? He's a team leader. He's a captain. He's a guy who's well respected in that locker room. And somebody needed to light a fire underneath the Bears because, how up and down they're playing on a week-to-week basis. Right now, they're not going to make the playoffs. This team is 3-4, 7 weeks into the season. And so he had the right to address his team and kind of, again, light a fire to make sure that these players understand, look, we got 9 games left. There's no time to be joking and playing around. We've got to get things, get this ship righted, or it's going to be a long season for us. So I like Brandon Marshall stepping up and taking responsibility there. Also wanted to give some love to the Arizona Cardinals. Head coach Bruce Arians has done an excellent job since going out to Arizona. They were 10-6 last year. I did not think that they would be able to repeat that success. I just kind of thought that, that's how the Cards fell. They had some things work out their way. But this is a team who has been able to battle through injuries. Right now, they're without Darnell Dockett. They're without Darrell Washington. They're without Calais Campbell. They missed Carson Palmer missed a couple games. And so, this is a team that's been able to fight adversity. John Abraham, one of their top pass rushers, he had to basically step away due to concussion type symptoms. And so I'm looking at this Arizona Cardinals team, and I have to give credit where it's due. He's done a great job. They're 5-1 It looks like they're well on track to get 10 wins again. Hopefully this year can be enough. The NFC was so loaded last year. A 10-6 record wasn't good enough to get in. But as long as Carson Palmer can stay healthy, and I think that's the major concern because he can't scramble. Right now at 37 years old, he's just a statue in the pocket. And so you certainly hope that his health can maintain. He's going to take a lot of hits, with not being a mobile quarterback. Andre Ellington needs to stay healthy. He's definitely been a great workhorse for the Cardinals this year. Young running back, I want to give him some props too. Wasn't super high on him in the preseason, but he certainly came out and produced, so I like that. The weapons you have on the outside with Fitzgerald and Floyd. And this defense plays well. I have no idea how they're ranked in the top 5 stopping the run without Dockett, without Campbell, without Darrell Washington, without Abraham. But a guy who I spoke on in the preseason, who I said who was going to need to step up, and I seen him out there flying around the other day, was second-year player Kevin Minter, inside linebacker. They picked up from LSU. And I said, with Darrell Washington being out of that lineup, they're going to need somebody to step up, and particularly him. And he's done that this year. So I certainly like to see that. They have Cromartie and Peterson at defensive back. And so this is a strong group. It's not a fluke out in Arizona. And they've already knocked off the 49ers once. So we'll just be able to see if it'll sustain. But right now, if you look at the Arizona Cardinals at 5-1, if they can split with Seattle, that'll put them at 6 wins. You'd have to think that they have an opportunity to sweep the Rams, but even splitting with them will give them 7 wins. At that point, you're only looking for 3 more victories throughout the course of the season. So I certainly like what Bruce Arians is doing out in Arizona. Him and Chuck Pagano out in Indianapolis. Kind of underrated teams as far as the defensive side of the football go. And Arians was the coordinator up under Pagano the year before. And so both of those guys doing an excellent job. Taking a look at the Seattle Seahawks, everybody wants to know what's going on with the troubles, and I'm going to tell you what it is. Missing players. I think that usually, and you know what, you've seen that with the Baltimore Ravens a couple years ago. These teams win a Super Bowl. It certainly affords you some cushion as far as how you manage your roster the next year or two, because once you win a Super Bowl, there's some security going on with jobs. And so, you've seen it with the Ravens a couple years ago, and I think it's happened to Seattle this year. I'm talking about roster turnover. They lost defensive end Chris Clemens. They lost defensive tackle Red Bryant. They lost defensive back Brandon Browner. They lost defensive back Walter Thurman. They lost defensive back Jeremy Lane. They lost wide receiver Golden Tate. They lost fullback Michael Robinson. They've traded Percy Harvin. I know he wasn't doing a lot this year, but he was still a part of their team. And Russell Okung, their tackle, he's playing with the torn labrum. That's given him some pain. They've been without tight end Zach Miller a couple games with injuries. And so you're now looking at a team where the depth isn't there, especially in that secondary. The reason that the Legion of Boom was established is you had Brandon Browner and Richard Sherman, 2 6'3" and 6'4" defensive backs, starting at the corners. You had Earl Thomas and Cam Chancellor over the top. But the depth I talk about, that means that Byron Maxwell, he's another player who's out injured right now. He's a starter for Seattle at defensive back. But that meant that Byron Maxwell, Walter Thurman, and Jeremy Lane. Now you have 3 defensive backs who can come in nickel and dime situations and still play at a high level. And then you take Red Bryant. He was a beast in that middle there, stopping a run. And then you put Chris Clemens next to him. And you got Averill on the other side. Now you got guys coming off those edges bringing pressure. And so certainly, the players that they've lost is coming back to hurt them. And also, they're learning how to play being the hunted. When you have that target on your back, when you're the best team in the league, when you have this aura, this bravado about you, when you're the defending Super Bowl champion, every team is looking to give you their best shot. And you've seen it this week in St. Louis. Now, granted, I do believe, and we'll talk about that once we do the final wrap for our games, I do believe that they recovered that fumble against the Rams and should have had an opportunity to win that game. But nonetheless, the Rams pulled 2 special teams tricks on them. That goes to show you the length the teams will go, how far teams will go just to beat you. And so I think this is a Seattle team right now just getting a gut check. They're being humbled. They have to look themselves in the mirror and dig deep and realize it's a different group of guys from last year and make the necessary adjustments, because right now they are not playing consistent football. Primarily their bread and butter. They're not running the football as well the last couple weeks, and that defense is looking real leaky. And so Seattle certainly has some major issues they've got to concern themselves with. Also the Cleveland Browns. We came in when we talked about this team last week. We said, here's a team that's 3-2. They have a grand opportunity these next 3 weeks to show us that they should be mentioned in the conversation of the AFC top 5 power rankings, or a team who could possibly make a wild card push, because their 2 losses had only come by a combined 5 points. Well, I said the next 3 games they have, there was 1 win combined coming into week 7. They were playing at Jacksonville, who hadn't won. They were going to play the Raiders, who hadn't won, and they were going to play the Buccaneers, who had only 1 win. And I said those are games that if the Cleveland Browns want us to consider them seriously consider them, these are all games that they should win. And the first thing that they do is go down to Jacksonville, despite head coach Mike Pettine addressing the issue that we're not going to snooze. We're not going to look at this as we're not going to get caught up in a trap game. And that's exactly what they do, is go down there and drop that game in Jacksonville. So until further notice, and it's going to be a while, this Cleveland Browns team is still average. They're not ready to step up. The Houston Texans, it's all about quarterback Ryan Fitzpatrick. I will say that, as a team, I think they have basically everything in place. When you have a guy like J.J. Watt, who's beasting like that on defense, and their defense plays well enough. I think something that I seen them get exploited this week is they're slow at linebacker. Brian Cushing, he's had a couple ACL, MCL injuries. He's not the same player he used to be. He's lost a lot of speed. I look at inside linebacker, not tough enough there. D'Amico Ryans was a guy who's still playing at a pretty high level now with Philadelphia. And Wynton Marsalis, or Merciless, I believe you pronounce it. He's not doing too well stopping the run. Now, Javion Clowney coming back, I'm certainly thinking that's going to be something that could boost their defense. But I also see the Texans being suspect at the safety position. And offensively, I like DeAndre Hopkins, Andre Johnson, Arian Foster. I don't think that those guys there are slouches by any means. But I think that a good tight end would help this team out. But it's Ryan Fitzpatrick. He's going to be the guy who, when you look at this Texans team, he's probably going to end up being the weak link, not able to get it done. And didn't play bad last night, but he didn't play good either. And that's kind of what you're seeing out of him, is average quarterback play. And for a team that kind of, they really need a quarterback to really come out, play clean football, and just convert third downs and make the key passes. And he's incapable of doing that. And so I think that this Texans team is going to remain average because of the quarterback position. The Oakland Raiders. I don't know what it's going to take for this team to get a win. You're looking at their schedule, how you were looking at Jacksonville, and you're searching through and saying, well, who's it going to be and how? And so I haven't seen the Raiders schedule. I think at this point, Cleveland, I mean, we've just seen them drop one, so we can throw them in the conversation. Not sure if they play Tampa Bay or Jacksonville. Maybe Minnesota, the Redskins. There's a couple teams out there who are struggling mightily right now. Possibly, no, they already lost to the Jets, but you're just wondering. When this team is going to win, and more than anything, is this franchise ever going to be able to turn it around? This Raiders team has been treading water in mediocrity for years now. And I'm just not sure what it's going to take, or if they can ever get the allure and the respect back out there to the silver and black, because this franchise, let's face it, it's become a laughing stock in the NFL. They have the great fans and the history, but if you look at what's going on recently in Oakland, these teams are very poor, and it's become a plague. It's almost a given. I thought this year, with all the veterans they added, I mean, my God, you figure you bring in Matt Schaub, Jones Drew, tackle Donald Penn, wide receiver James Jones, You bring over on defense Justin Tuck, Lamar Woodley, guys with championship experience. You draft Khalil Mack. You bring over Terrell Brown, Carlos Rogers from the 49ers, guys with championship pedigree. You figure in there Charles Woodson, who's got a ring. And, and I thought this team at least would be competitive, but they're 0-6. And, it's not acceptable, like Brandon Marshall said. And so, I know for Raiders fans, it's just got to be frustrating year in and year out seeing a product that gets put on the field, and I don't know. It's just going to be interesting to see when, if ever, this Raiders team can get it turned around. That's going to conclude our first segment. I am the NFL Exporter. You are listening to the Final Wrap on Derek Shapiro's show. When we return, we'll talk some fantasy football, so stay tuned. Welcome back to the Final Wrap with the NFL Exporter on the Derek Shapiro Show. Make sure you're here with me each and every Tuesday, 7 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, as we recap all of the NFL and fantasy football action from the week before. And that leads us into our fantasy football segment. For week 7, the top 5 quarterbacks in fantasy football was Russell Wilson of the Seattle Seahawks. He actually was the top point scorer in all of fantasy football. Wilson became the first NFL player or quarterback to throw for 300 yards and run for 100 yards in a football game. This guy is absolutely spectacular. Had 3 TDs to go along with that. So Russell Wilson, your top fantasy scorer at 36 points. At number 2 for quarterbacks was Peyton Manning with 28. 3, Aaron Rodgers. This guy is on a tear right now. His last 4 games, 13 touchdown passes, 0 interceptions. Was damn near perfect. Only missed on 3 passes. That was good for 24 points. Ryan Tannehill of the Miami Dolphins had a solid game. He scored 23 points. And then you had Tom Brady of the New England Patriots and Eli Manning of the New York Giants. Both of those guys had 22 points. Looking at our running backs, it was Shane Vereen of the New England Patriots. Certainly gave his owners a little bit of comfort and confidence. I know a lot of people had him on the bench, hadn't really done much the last couple weeks. And so, I know his owners who had him on the bench were highly disappointed in that. But nonetheless, he had 2 touchdown receptions that helped him to score 23 points. Matt Forte is another guy on a tear. 4 straight weeks of double digits. He's got 6 touchdowns in his last 3 games. He is just killing it out there. Matt Forte had 22 points. Ronnie Hillman, I tell you, this guy's been a pleasant surprise for owners who were able to scoop him up. I would say he has exceeded expectation. Those were 2 very tough matchups against the New York Jets and San Francisco 49ers defense. And he put up double digits in back-to-back weeks. And so I think right now he has the inside edge to that starting job. The starter, Monty Ball, who is out injured, I don't think he did enough to really lock up that spot. And so that'll be interesting to see when he comes back. Nonetheless, Hillman had 21 points. Le'Veon Bell shined on Monday Night Football. This guy, 7 straight games of 100-plus all-purpose yards. First Pittsburgh Steeler to accomplish that feat, so that's big for him. Had a receiving touchdown, was certainly a big part of the Steelers' win on Monday Night Football. He had 19 points. And then you had Ahmad Bradshaw of the Indianapolis Colts. I tell you, this guy just continues to impress. Had another receiving touchdown. Him along with the DeMarco Murray of the Dallas Cowboys and Denard Robinson of the Jacksonville Jaguars. This was his first start. And if you remember him, he was the quarterback at Michigan. He's been converted to running back in his second year. Bradshaw, Murray, and Robinson all had 18 points. Looking at our wide receivers, it's Demaryius Thomas once again. He tops the list for the second time in 3 weeks at the wide receiver position. Caught the record-breaking touchdown pass from Peyton Manning. Also scored again. This guy, man, he's just a beast. 8 catches, 171 yards, 2 touchdowns. He got off to a slow start this season, but I'd say the last 3 games, this guy has piled it on. He is an absolute fantasy stud. How about rookie Sammy Watkins of the Buffalo Bills? Big game for him. 9 catches, 122 yards, 2 touchdowns. That was good for 24 points. His last touchdown was the game winner with about 5 seconds left, so that was huge. You have Randall Cobb and Doug Baldwin, as well as Roddy White. You have 3 guys there, all who had 18 points. All of those guys were able to get 100 or more receiving yards and a touchdown. And coming in at number 3 was Golden Tate. This guy has been huge for the Detroit Lions. 10 catches, 154 yards, had a 77-yard touchdown reception that really gave some energy and life and hope to the Lions late in that ball game. He scored 21 points. And then you have Odell Beckham Jr. as well as Kenny Stills of the New Orleans Saints. Both of those players had 16 points. Stills is a guy who, is kind of going to fluctuate. He's with Drew Brees in the offense in New Orleans. But Odell Beckham Jr., he looks great as a rookie. He's got 3 touchdowns in his first 3 NFL games. And with Victor Cruz being out, I think this guy is going to have a big year for the New York Giants. Taking a look at our tight ends, a name that we're not familiar with. There's actually a couple names on this list this week that I'm almost 100% sure nobody had in their fantasy football lineups. I'm talking about Gavin Escobar of the Dallas Cowboys. He was the top tight end with 18 points. He had 2 touchdown receptions, and the Cowboys went over the Giants. You have Antonio Gates with 60 yards and a touchdown. That was good for 12 points. And then you have Cooper Helfet of the Seattle Seahawks had 12. I'm quite sure nobody had him in. Owen Daniels of the Baltimore Ravens had 11, along with Jeff Cumberland. I know nobody had him in. Charles Clay, highly doubt if anybody had him in their lineup. And then Dwayne Allen, I'm sure people had him in. All of those players scored 11 points. Dwayne Allen is turning in a very good year at the tight end position in fantasy football. I think he's been one of the excellent value picks or a guy you scooped up off the waiver wire. We all thought that Coby Fleener, we were surprised to see Fleener not get the start, which you kind of heard from Allen, who was supposed to be the starter last year. He missed all of last year due to an injury. But he certainly, I see what they're saying now. They said that he was a better pass catcher. I do see that. He's faster, has more. He's more elusive than Fleener, and he's a better blocker. So Dwayne Allen certainly paying big dividends this year for the Indianapolis Colts. And then you had Greg Olsen of the Panthers, had 100 yards. He continues to be a fantasy football machine. That was good for 10 points. And then Daniel Fells, I'm quite sure nobody had him in their lineup. He scored a 20-yard touchdown. That was good for 8 points. Taking a look at our defense special teams, who would have imagined that the Jacksonville Jaguars would be the top defense special teams on any week in the NFL? They had 15 points. The Minnesota Vikings defense also gave the Bills a hard time, even though they lost. They had 15 points as well. The Baltimore Ravens and Buffalo Bills each had 14 points. The Indianapolis Colts and the Miami Dolphins each had 12 points. The Denver Broncos had 9. And then the Cleveland Browns and Washington Redskins defenses each had 8 points. Rounding out our fantasy football studs for Week 8 in the NFL, at the kicker position, it was Sean Swisham of the Steelers and Nick Folk of the New York Jets. Both of those guys had 14 points. You had Kai Forbath for the Redskins, Blair Walsh for the Vikings, and Santos for the the Kansas City Chiefs. His name always escapes me. All of those guys had 13 points. You had Shane Graham of the New Orleans Saints with 12. And then you had Adam Vinatieri and Randy Bullock, the kicker for the Houston Texans. Both of those guys had 11 points. And to round out our top 5 kickers for Week 7 in fantasy football, Sebastian Janikowski of the Oakland Raiders, Nick Novak of the San Diego Chargers, Stephen Gostkowski of the New England Patriots, and Justin Tucker of the Baltimore Ravens. All of those kickers had 9 points. So that was a great job. I'm quite sure if you had some or a lot of those players on your fantasy football team, they certainly should have keyed your team to a big victory. Let's take another quick break. When we return, we'll start recapping our Week 7 action from around the NFL. It's the NFL Exporter, Derek Shapiro Show. You are listening to The Final Wrap. Thank you for returning to the final wrap with the NFL Exporter on the Derek Shapiro Show. Don't forget the call-in number to the show is 716-249-0552. The email is NFLExporter@yahoo.com. Just leave your name, city and state you're from, favorite football team, and whatever it is that you would like for me to talk about on the show. I will definitely make sure to include that in one of the show segments. Also, make sure you follow me on Twitter at NFLExporter or Facebook.com/NFL Exporter. Just send a friend request. I've got shows on every day of the week, and so I'm quite sure you'll enjoy the information that goes up on those Facebook page as well as my Twitter feed. Now let's do what we do. This show is called The Final Wrap because we put the final touches on each and every week of NFL football. Things got started last Thursday night with the New England Patriots barely beating the New York Jets 27-25. This was a game where the Patriots did not look good at all, and particularly their defense. This is the second game this year that I've just seen the Patriots defense get ran all over, and wide receivers are running through their secondary wide open. I mean, you would think no one was out there. I'm concerned. I don't like what I'm seeing out of this Patriots defense at all. If you think about week 1, Miami beat them bad. Week 2, they were able to rebound against a sorry Minnesota team. Week 3, you get embarrassed on Monday Night Football by the Chiefs. You come back the next week, and they played the Raiders the next week, but you can only beat the Raiders 16-9 at home, and then you get embarrassed by Kansas City. That Cincinnati game, Cincinnati, as you can see right now, they were the perfect team to come in there and lay an egg for New England. And then New England comes back. You get gift wrapped, 3 turnovers and over 100 yards of penalties by the Bills. And then you come with this poor performance on Monday night. And so I'm not impressed with this Patriots team right now. I actually have them last behind Denver, San Diego, the Colts, and the Ravens. I think that this defense, it needs to improve quickly. They will not be able to survive, especially in the playoffs, with the defense that I'm seeing right now. But New England always finds a way, due to their sorry division, to end up with a first-round bye, and that just leaves them with one home game that they find a way to win, and then they're back in the championship. But I'm not impressed at all with this team. Tom Brady in that offense is certainly playing better. You've seen Shane Vereen, as we talked about in our fantasy section, as well as Tom Brady. Brady 3 TD passes, 2 of those to Vereen. But the Jets completely dominated time of possession. They had the football for 40 minutes. Do you know what that means? That means that the New England Patriots defense was on the football field for an extra quarter and 5 minutes, which gave the Jets defense an awful lot of rest. The Jets obviously don't know how to close games out. Missed a 2-point conversion. Got the final field goal attempt blocked. But this New England Patriots team, I'm not impressed. The Patriots are now 5-2. The Jets are done at 1-6. They made the trade for Percy Harvin. We'll see what that does. Maybe bring a little more life to their offense, but it's too little, too late. And their secondary is not going to hold up. Taking a look at the Ravens beat up on the Atlanta Falcons. And again, we talked about this earlier with Atlanta. They can't run the football. They play no defense. Therefore, you end up losing 29-7. By the way, on the road, which is where you can't win. This one was all about Baltimore. Joe Flacco, 258, 2 TD passes, 2 interceptions. But his defense played well to make sure that things didn't get out of hand. They're getting some good balance now. Justin Forsett has certainly claimed the top running back spot out in Baltimore. Strong game, 22 carries, 95 yards. Torrey Smith, 80 yards and a touchdown. So, and the Ravens defense, this defense is playing extremely well. I was very high on their defense coming into the season, and they're showing improving. And so, Ravens sole possession of first place out in the AFC North early at 5-2. The Falcons are 2-5, yet surprisingly still in it. Their division is so poor, with Carolina being 3-1, leading the division. The Saints are 2-4, Falcons 2-5. Buccaneers 1-5. So mathematically, all of those teams still very much in it as far as their own division is concerned. Next, we had the Washington Redskins barely eke by the Tennessee Titans. And what I took away from this game is the Washington Redskins are bad. You can only beat the Tennessee Titans on your home field, and it took a last-second field goal to do it. You've got to be kidding me. I seen this Titans team last week at home in Tennessee give up 336 yards of offense to rookie quarterback Blake Bortles. And the Titans barely won that game. It took a blocked field goal on their end to stop a possible field goal from Josh Scooby to give Jacksonville the win last week. And so the Redskins are just horrible. They're not running the football effectively. Alfred Morris was the one guy in the preseason who was the constant. Where the running game is struggling, and if the running game is going to struggle, this is a new offense. Don't forget that. Jay Gruden, he's brought a new offensive system over. These other players, they're not faring too well, and so it got so bad. Kirk Cousins, they benched him. This backup quarterback for the Redskins who, now we can put the rumors to rest. Everybody was so high. Kirk Cousins, he's the answer. He looks better than RG3. He's a better fit for the system. Give him a chance. Well, we did that, and we see that him being in the ball game, it didn't result in one single win for the Washington Redskins. They were 0-4 during Cousins' stint there. And even though he put up some good numbers, he's a turnover machine. And so after throwing 3 interceptions in the fourth quarter last week at Arizona that cost this Redskins team, he comes out, he fumbles, and then he throws an interception. And the next thing you know, they're putting him on the bench. And so he's done in Washington. The Redskins are 2-5. The Titans are 2-5. Neither one of these teams are good. Charlie Whitehurst for the Tennessee did throw 2 touchdowns. Pierre Garcon had 87 yards and a touchdown. The majority of his yards came on one play. And so neither one of these teams looking impressive. Neither one of these teams will be in the playoffs this year. One of our big upsets of the day, and there were quite a few of them, you had the St. Louis Rams knock off the Seattle Seahawks. Now, again, this was a very interesting ball game, but I think that it really just ended up being a situation where the better team won that day, because I think that's a ball game that if the Rams would have lost, they would have been looking at themselves, and most people would have been saying, you know what, this is a game that St. Louis played better. The Seattle got away with one. Well, in this game, we talked about Russell Wilson become the first player in NFL history with 300 passing yards, 100 rushing yards, 3 TDs. Doug Baldwin, in the absence of Percy Harvin, looks like he's going to step up and be that number 1 wide receiver. But for St. Louis, let's give rookie Austin Davis a lot of credit. After a very rough outing last week against the 49ers, comes back, doesn't put up a ton of yardage, but you know what? He was accurate with the football. Completed 18 out of 21 passes, 152 yards, 2 TDs, no turnovers. And Trey Mason, we spoke about him last week after seeing him perform against the 49ers on Monday night, I said to myself, this guy looks like he's the best running back in that Rams backfield. Came out, had a strong game, 85 yards and a touchdown, but he did have a key fumble. When you looked at the replay, to everyone except the referees, it looked like Seattle recovered that football and should have had an opportunity to possibly score to win that game. But nonetheless, Jeff Fisher showed some guts. They pulled out a couple trick plays out of the special teams playbook. One resulted in a 88-yard touchdown punt return, where you had a punt returner Tavon Austin go to one side of the football field and act like he was going to field a punt, while the other gunner on the other side caught the ball on the side of the field where the punt really went and was able to streak up the sidelines hands-free and score a touchdown. And then on a crucial 4th down and 8 in his own territory, mind you, Jeff Fisher goes for a fake punt, pulls it off, and ultimately it was that type of gutsy play calling all day from the Rams that really allowed for the upset. So now the Rams are 2-4. The Seahawks stumbling right now. They're at 3-3. Talked about the Cleveland Browns earlier in the show. Dropped one to Jacksonville. I don't really understand how. Basically, this one got unraveled in the 4th quarter for Cleveland. This was a 10-10 ball game. Excuse me, this was a 10-6 ball game going into the 4th quarter that Jacksonville was leading. For the Browns, could not run the football. Ben Tate only 36 yards. Brian Hoyer did not throw a TD passes. He missed on 25 pass attempts. Jordan Cameron came back up missing in action, only had 1 catch for 5 yards. And, it's interesting because the Browns defense did their part. They grabbed 3 interceptions from rookie Blake Bortles. But ultimately, with all the extra opportunities that Jacksonville had, it was Denard Robinson running for 127 yards and a TD. The Jags get their first victory of the season. They're now 1-6. The Browns are 3-3. And everybody now has question marks. We'll see how they respond. They still have 2 very winnable games playing Tampa Bay and Oakland, but I'm quite sure their confidence level would have been much better if they could have secured a win down in Jacksonville. The Indianapolis Colts, I tell you, this team is playing good football right now. And you know what I like about the Colts? It's sound. Andrew Luck in that offense, they're not turning the football over. Luck is not making silly mistakes. They're really not doing anything to hurt themselves. And I know you hear me say this, kind of week in and week out, but it matters. It absolutely matters when you're not turning the football over. Number one, you're not putting your defense in the hole. You're not giving the other team momentum. You're not giving the other team short fields to work with. This Indianapolis Colts team, they come out. If they can't, convert 3rd downs, they punt the football, plain and simple. Their defense is playing extremely well. Again, I'm looking at Chuck Pagano, and I talked about his offspring. We'll talk about him again, Bruce Arians over in Arizona. But these guys got their teams. The way I like their head coaching style, they don't shoot themselves in the foot, and that's very important if your team is going to win. You can't defeat yourself. It's easier said than done. But you know what? There's a lot of teams in the NFL that they do it week in and week out. But this one was all about Indianapolis. Andrew Luck, 344 yards, 2 TDs. He's going to be looking to make history next week. He is 1 game. He's tied right now with, of course, Peyton Manning for the most consecutive games with throwing for 300 yards. He's got 5 right now. He'll be looking to break that record next week against Pittsburgh. I think they're right for the picking. T.Y. Hilton had 107 yards in the air. He is establishing himself as the number 1 receiver, kind of getting that torch pass over from Reggie Wayne. He's playing very well, that being T.Y. Hilton, back-to-back games of over 100 yards. And I see Indianapolis's run game trying to turn the corner a little bit. Trent Richardson had 77 yards on the ground. Ahmad Bradshaw brings some nice versatility. He had another touchdown catch. And for the second time in 3 weeks, I have just seen the Indianapolis Colts just dominate in time of possession. They had the football for 40 minutes in that game, similar to the Jets. I mean, for a defense, talking about Indianapolis, you wonder the difference was that their defense was on the field 20 minutes. These guys were fresh. I mean, 2/3 of the football game, the Bengals defense is on the field, and so when you can control the clock like that, it absolutely wears the defense down. Cincinnati couldn't get anything going. 135 yards worth of offense. They're still without AJ Green, but I mean, it just was a poor effort. I'm quite sure this is one they want to forget about quickly because they got the Ravens coming up this week, a division rival, and so they've got to focus there. But Indianapolis, 5-game win streak. I really like what I've seen out of this team right now. Cincinnati drops to 3-2-1. Buffalo was able to eke out a last-second victory with rookie Sammy Watkins catching his second touchdown with about 5 seconds left. Kyle Orton led a late drive there. He had 283 yards, 2 TDs, and certainly got some help on his deep pass to put the Bills at about the 2 or 3 yard line. This wide receiver Hogan, never heard of him in my life, but he climbs up the ladder and goes up high to bring down a very difficult catch in double coverage to bring the Bills to the 2 yard line. And like I said, rookie Sammy Watkins, 9 catches for 122 yards, 2 TDs. Best game of his early career. He's a rookie, but he did an excellent job out there. And now we see, I guess the change at quarterback is paying dividends for Buffalo. I was not quite sure that was going to be the case, but Kyle Orton has come in there, and he's obviously played much better than E.J. Manuel. And so the Bills are now 4-3. Minnesota drops to 2-5. And this Minnesota team, they're going to be in a rebuilding stage. There's no question about it. Adrian Peterson, it's highly unlikely he's going to return to that ball club after this year. Greg Jennings is an older player. So you look at this offense, and they've got young pieces. Jerick McKinnon got his first start at running back. He's a rookie. He did a great job, 107 rushing yards. Bridgewater, he's a rookie. He continues to struggle, 157 yards and a TD, but the pieces are there for Minnesota. Bridgewater's a rookie at quarterback. McKinnon, a rookie at running back. You've got a second-year wide receiver, maybe a fifth-year tight end. Your top tackle, your top offensive lineman, he's entering his third year. And so they're young over there. I think this is a team that, is just going to have to unexpectedly learn how to live life and play without Adrian Peterson. Nobody ever seen that coming. And he was a franchise player, and so they're going to have to, do some things in the offseason and kind of revamp this whole thought process without Peterson being in the mix. Miami, real impressive victory on the road against the Bears, 27-14. Ryan Tannehill, very efficient with the football, probably played his best game of the season. Only missed on 5 passes. Lamar Miller continues to give him some balance on the ground, 18 carries, 61 yards, but got in the end zone. And the Dolphins, due to time of possession, which was off of 4 Chicago turnovers. I tell you, this Bears team very inconsistent right now. Matt Forte's the constant, 109 all-purpose yards, 2 TDs, but Jay Cutler struggled. He was under duress all day. Cameron Wake and these guys were all over him. And when you can have 15 extra minutes with the football, basically a quarter, if you look at it that way, it takes a toll on the defense, And so the Dolphins are now 3-3. Chicago 3-4. Searching for answers. They've got to go out to New England next week, which is going to be no easy task. But I think they'll be in position to respond to a Patriots defense that is not playing so well right now. Next, the Detroit Lions pulled out a big-time victory at home over the New Orleans Saints. This was a game that the Saints had well in hand. They had no business whatsoever losing this football game. But if we look at the Saints right now at 2-4, we have to say they're a bad team. And they say that bad teams find ways to lose football games. And that's what you're seeing out of New Orleans. New Orleans was up 23-10 in this ball game with about 4 minutes left. At that point, Drew Brees had 342 yards, 2 touchdowns. Marcus Colston and Kenny Stills, 2 of his receivers, had over 100 yards. They had weathered the storm, played extremely well, and were in position to get a much-needed victory. What do the New Orleans Saints conveniently do? They allow Golden Tate, wide receiver for the Lions, to take a 10-yard dig route, a comeback route, a curl, which means the receiver, runs downfield and basically just turns around, kind of comes back towards the quarterback a little bit. He had to jump in the air to catch the ball to make it so bad. This guy was able to turn a 10-yard completion into a 77-yard touchdown. Poor defense, New Orleans. Poor defense. Guys taking bad angles. It's just, it's some things you just can't explain. And then after that, Drew Brees uncharacteristically comes back and throws an interception, which gives the ball back to Detroit. Detroit is in a fourth down situation. What else does New Orleans do but come up with a pass interference call to give Detroit another chance? And then Matt Stafford throws a touchdown to seal the deal. Detroit is able to win 24-23. At that point, New Orleans was being dominated so much in the trenches, they couldn't even get in field goal range. And so, this New Orleans Saints team, they've got to find a way to get it together. Life is not going to get any easier on this poor defense. You got red-hot Aaron Rodgers coming to town. And I don't know. This Saints team, like I said, they're still in it mathematically because they're only one loss behind Carolina. They'll probably come out of this division being the best team. But right now, whoever comes out of that NFC South is going to get bounced quick, fast, in a hurry in that first round. Let's take a break. When we return, we'll finish recapping all of our action from Week 7 around the NFL. You are listening to the final wrap on DerekShapiroShow.com with the NFL Exporter. We'll be right back. Welcome back to the final wrap on the Derek Shapiro Show. As always, I am your host, the NFL Exporter, and let's go ahead and finish recapping our action from Week 7 around the NFL. We're going to pick things back up as we seen the Green Bay Packers dispose of the Carolina Panthers. This Panthers team is another team that is really struggling. I think the things that we talked about with this team in the preseason are certainly coming to fruition. Here's another team that cannot run the football, and their defense is bad. And that is going to be a recipe that always spells disaster. When we talked about this Carolina team in the preseason, we knew they wouldn't be able to run the football. We knew that passing the football, they would be limited pretty much to two guys, Greg Olsen and Kelvin Benjamin. Other receivers, they're just slow. Just plain and simple. They're having a difficult time getting open. And when you can't run the football, we talked about it, Cam Newton doesn't have the weapons. I think that certainly if he had Brandon LaFell and Steve Smith Sr. still there, Cam Newton's a good quarterback, but they haven't surrounded him with enough pieces to really maximize his potential or his ceiling. So we'll see if they can try to do that sometime in the near future, or it's just going to be the same story year in and year out. But this Panthers defense is a surprise how bad they are. But I think that, you kind of seen that. It was an aberration last year. They had a lot of things going right for them, primarily their front seven. Right now, they've had off-the-field distractions. They don't have one of their top defensive ends, Greg Hardy, and that makes a difference. Hardy and Charles Johnson were arguably the best defensive end tandem in the NFL last year. They were bringing pressure constantly. Thomas Davis, along with Luke Kelce, were doing really well at that linebacker position. They also have a big defensive tackle, Star Luatelli, holding up things in the middle. And so that front seven was being so dominant. It was playing so well that it made amends and was really able to put mascara on a secondary that was very suspect. And so while you look at this year, Greg Hardy's not in there. And their front seven is not playing as well. They're not getting pressure on quarterbacks like they were last year. They're having a difficult time stopping the run. And that's exposing their secondary, who, by the way, I don't know. When I seen this in the offseason, I knew these guys were in trouble. Their best defensive back, Captain Munnerlin, they let him go. But at safety, you bring in Roman Harper from the New Orleans Saints, a guy who was in your division, and you were seeing him get burnt time after time after time. He's slow. He cannot make plays. And you bring him to your team? It's a joke. On Jordy Nelson's touchdown, who else was it but Roman Harper being out of position yet again, taking a wrong angle, missing a tackle, and letting Jordy Nelson go 60-plus yards for a touchdown. And so right now in Carolina, that lets you know how bad the NFC South is when Carolina's leading the division, and they just got plastered 38-17. This one was all about Aaron Rodgers. Like I said, the man is on fire right now. 13 touchdown passes, 0 interceptions. In his last 4, he was 19 out of 22. Threw 3 TD passes to 3 different receivers. Eddie Lacy tabbed in 60 yards and a touchdown. And Randall Cobb had 121 receiving yards and a touchdown. For Green Bay, who is streaking right now, 4-game win streak. They are tied at 5-2 atop the NFC North, a half game behind the Lions, who beat them head-to-head. Moving on, we've got Kansas City. Big win for them over the San Diego Chargers. This was in somewhat of an upset, if you want to call it that. Kansas City has a good team, but I called this one here. You knew that the Kansas City Chiefs came into this game at 2-4, at 2-3, and they knew they could not afford to drop to 2-4. This was a must-win game for them. If they would have dropped to 2-4, that would have put them 3 games behind Denver and San Diego within the division, and there was no way that they could recover from that. They're going to, at this point, obviously probably have to try to make a push for a wild card spot, but this was a much-needed victory, and they did the things that they needed to do. They controlled the time, which is what you have to do when you play up against Phillip Rivers. 18 extra minutes. Kansas City had the football, and you have to do that. Look, Phillip Rivers in 20 minutes of action, this guy had 205 passing yards and 2 touchdowns. You figure another 5 or 10 minutes with the football, this is a game that San Diego would have won. But Kansas City had the perfect recipe. Jamal Charles, 22 carries, 95 yards, a touchdown. When you got a workhorse like that, allows you to control the football. You know that Alex Smith is not going to turn it over. Very efficient again. 221 yards, a touchdown. Nothing to stand out at you, but didn't make any mistakes. And ultimately, Kansas City was able to put a game-winning drive together. I think Alex Smith learned from his opportunity that he blew out in San Francisco a couple weeks ago on how to manage that last drive of the game. And so Kansas City gets a last-second field goal to knock off Phillip Rivers and the San Diego Chargers down to 5-2. The Chiefs are now 3-3. Moving on, we've seen Arizona continue to do well. We talked about them in our first segment. And again, it was Carson Palmer, 250 yards, 2 touchdowns. Andre Ellington, 160 all-purpose yards. You have Michael Floyd with a touchdown, and Stephon Taylor scored a couple touchdowns there, giving Ellington a rest, who had 30 touches. I certainly don't want to wear him down too quick. And so Arizona's in sole possession by 2 games in the NFC West right now. We'll see if they can hold on to that lead. I've got a pretty tough game coming up this weekend against Philadelphia, but impressive victory on the road, 24-13. Raiders still searching for their first win of the season. You knew it was going to be up and down with rookie quarterback David Carr. Only had 173 passing yards, no TDs. Raiders couldn't get anything going on the ground, and they'll give it another try next week. They're the only team who has yet to win this year in the NFL. Moving on to our next game, we've seen the Dallas Cowboys improve to 6-1. They beat the New York Giants at home. The Giants are now 3-4. Right now, Dallas is getting the balance that you look for out of your quarterback, running back, and top wide receiver. Tony Romo, 279 yards, 3 TDs. DeMarco Murray, congratulations to him. Another guy who set a record last week. Had quite a few records get broken last week. Peyton Manning, Russell Wilson. Now here's DeMarco Murray becoming the first running back in NFL history to start off a season with 7 consecutive 100-yard plus running games and rushing games. And so big time props to him. Murray is definitely doing this thing. Looks very good out there, 128 yards and a TD. And Des Bryant, 151 receiving yards, was dominant in his one-on-one matchup against Giants defensive back Prince Amukamara. And when I talk about balance right now, teams are having trouble against Dallas because if you don't put men in the box, the way the Cowboys' offensive line is blocking, DeMarco Murray is going to gash you. And if you put too many men in the box, Tony Romo has some receivers on the outside, and particularly Dez Bryant and also Terrence Williams, who could beat you in one-on-one coverage. And so, I really like what Dallas has going now. Their defense is playing well, forced some turnovers there. And it's a situation now where everybody's just sitting to wait and see, is Dallas going to be able to keep this up consistently throughout the course of the season? Or at some point, are they going to unravel and revert back to their old ways? For the Giants, tough outing. 2 turnovers really hurt them in this one, both by tight end, Larry Donald. Eli Manning threw 3 TDs. Odell Beckham Jr., the rookie, caught 2 of those, but not able to get enough going on the ground. I think they've certainly missed Rashard Jennings running the football the last 2 weeks. We didn't think it was going to be that much of a drop-off, but we can see, they certainly need Jennings back in there. I think he's going to be gone another 2 weeks. The Giants do have a bye this week, so he'll probably return, but just not able to make enough plays. The Giants came up just short in this one. Sunday Night Football, we've seen Peyton Manning break that record. Denver played extremely well. And look, I'm going to tell you like this. If there's nothing else that you know about playing the Denver Broncos and Peyton Manning, is that you cannot afford to blow opportunities. You must use the clock. And I don't want to say every possession, but you cannot afford to go more than one possession without putting some type of points on the scoreboard. And if you're doing that, that means you're using some clock as well. Look, San Francisco, even though the score ended 42-17, this was a game that San Francisco was in, and they just didn't capitalize. When they were down 14-0, Anquan Bolden dropped a touchdown, which would have cut the lead to 14-7. You need to do that when you're playing Peyton Manning. They end up settling for a field goal, and then Manning comes back down to score a touchdown, so you're down 21-3. So you can't do that. You cannot do that. Also preceding that touchdown drop, there were some drops by 49er receivers, and particularly Vernon Davis. I don't know, he's struggling now, but you need third down conversions. You have to chew up clock, and then the 49ers are able to cut the lead to 21-10 right before halftime. They come out of halftime, they get a stop. You're down 21-10. What does Colin Kaepernick do? He throws an interception, which on the next play, Peyton Manning comes back and he throws a touchdown to stretch the lead out from 11-18. And so, at that point, it was over. You cannot, when you're playing the Denver Broncos, I can't emphasize enough how important it is. Peyton Manning and that offense put so much pressure on your defense. And these guys, when they come on the football field, best believe they're not going more than 1-2 possessions without putting some type of points on the scoreboard. So there's a way that you're going to beat Denver. It entails a lot. I think something else that stood out to me in this ball game, I'm not surprised by Denver. I mean, come on. And when coming into this one, you knew the 49ers, without Patrick Willis, without Navarro Bowman, without Alden Smith, they were already having trouble rushing the passer. So you knew Manning was going to have all day to stand back there in the pocket and pick the 49ers defense apart. But the 49ers are banged up on their offensive line. See, this is a game where you're saying the 49ers should have been saying we're physical enough. We can come into this thing and beat you up running the football and keep Manning on the sideline and make your defense work and keep this thing close and try to stick around and take advantage of some opportunities. So the personnel is not there right now for San Francisco. I think this is a group right now at 4-3 that just wants to kind of keep pace until they can get fully healthy, which is not going to be probably back until around week 11 or 12. But they've got to be concerned in San Francisco because, they very easily could have lost to Kansas City. They barely eked out a win against Philadelphia, and they're just not playing consistent football. But this one was all about Denver. Again, Manning broke that record in high fashion, 300 yards, 4 touchdowns. Demarius Thomas, 171 yards, 2 TDs, and Ronnie Hillman, who I spoke about in our fantasy segment, is doing a great job filling in for Monty Ball. I think he's really closing in on securing that starting job, even when Ball returns. Broncos are now 5-1. And then on Monday Night Football, it was the Pittsburgh Steelers taking full advantage of the Houston Texans and their continuous mishaps and turnovers. And it's just, it's another situation where, you just scratch your head sometimes when you watch these NFL games and you try to figure out, what's the thinking? What's the thought process now? This is a game that Houston got out to a 13-0 lead. We're playing very well on the road, may I add. And it was basically a whirlwind of events that took place in the last 3 minutes of the first half that ultimately sealed the Texans' fate. Again, they were up 13-0. Pittsburgh scores 24 points in the last 3 minutes of the first half to go into that game at halftime leading 24-13. They're able to tack on a couple second half field goals to hold Houston off, but this is how this one played out. Now, Houston is up 13-10. It's right before halftime, maybe about 3 minutes left, 2 minutes left in the ball game. And Arian Foster, who is a very sure-handed running back, ends up fumbling on a 2-yard line. That allows for Pittsburgh to score a touchdown and go up 17-13. Now, at that point, Pittsburgh only had one timeout left. After the kickoff, they kicked it back to Houston. There's 1 minute left in the first half. After a disaster like that happens, you should be kneeling the football and going into halftime saying, you know what, we're on the road, momentum has changed, the crowd is in it. Nothing positive is going to come out of us trying to go down the football field and put up more points. Let's just get out of here safely. It's 17-13. We're only down 4. Let's go into halftime, regroup, come out and play football. You know what the Houston Texans decide to do? With Ryan Fitzpatrick at quarterback, mind you, they want to pass the football. They want to make an attempt to get downfield. What ends up happening? The ball's tipped into the air and it's intercepted. And now Pittsburgh has the ball back with an opportunity to score again. Another huge mistake by the Texans. What happens next? On a second down play, quarterback Ben Roethlisberger tells his running back, Le'Veon Bell, motions him out to wide receiver. So he's in the backfield. Whoever's checking him, presumably a linebacker, is responsible for him. When Bell flanks out to wide receiver, the linebacker or safety, whoever was supposed to be checking him or assigned to him, they just totally slept. And they stayed where they were. And safety DJ Swearinger, he's a second-year player, he's seen what was taking place, and instead of calling a timeout or running out there to defend himself, he jumps and he hollers and he screams and he pounces and he points his finger and he does all this stuff and halfway runs out. And it's too late. By that time, Roethlisberger snaps the ball, makes an easy pitch and catch to Le'Veon Bell for a touchdown. And I'm saying to DJ Swearinger, if you seen that happen, you get out there and cover him yourself, or you call a timeout. But jumping around and all this stuff and pointing to the guy who's supposed to be checking him, he didn't hear you. Obviously, didn't see it. You handle it. And so, those type of miscues and errors, it sealed this Houston Texans team fate, and it's ridiculous to watch. That's why you hear the dismay in my voice. I mean, it's just absolutely absurd. It shouldn't happen. And then you come out the second half, they play halfway decent. They're driving down and try to cut into the lead to go for an onside kick, and DeAndre Hopkins inexcusably gets stripped of the football. You're in the NFL. You know by now that when you are running the football and players engage with you on the defensive side of the football, the first thing they're trying to do is rip it away, secure the football. He fumbles, and that just spoke volumes to the type of night it was for the Texans. Pittsburgh tacked on an extra field goal to put it out of reach. And so this Steelers team, they're not playing too well. On offense, you like what you see. Their big three continues to shine. Ben Roethlisberger, 265, 2 more touchdown passes. Le'Veon Bell, 7 straight game with 100+ all-purpose yards and a touchdown. And I just love Antonio Brown, man. I mean, This guy is a football player, man. And I used to play wide receiver, so I got a lot of appreciation for this guy who just comes in and week out and has all of the intangibles, the work ethic, the smarts, the quickness, the hands. I mean, he's the complete package. And so Antonio Brown, 9 catches, 90 yards. But it's that Steelers defense that really was lucked up with some turnovers here and was able to make amends. But they came out the gates horrible, giving up 13 straight points. I'm not sold on the Steelers at all. They are 4-3. That loss now drops the Texans to 3-4. And I can tell, I see J.J. Watt. I see that Texans defense. And, it's not going to be too much longer if Houston can't get a couple wins before that locker room implodes, because we had similar type situations going on last year. And this team just said, you know what, forget it. They threw in the towel, and it's heading in that direction right now. That's going to wrap up our show for today. Once again, I'd like to thank all of my listeners and viewers for stopping in every week to make sure that you get your full recap. I know a lot of people work the graveyard shift. A lot of people, don't have, may not have cable. They may not have the NFL ticket where you can see all the games. Might just have things you do on a Sunday, or you might not have a TV. You may be working, whatever it is. This is certainly the place that you want to come to recap all of your weeks, every week's NFL and fantasy football action, to find out what happened, how it happened, why it happened. And so, thank you so much for tuning in. Always shouting out my man Derek Shapiro. Always thank you very much for the opportunity. And again, before we get out of here, let's make sure you follow me on Twitter at NFLExporter, Facebook.com/NFLExporter, YouTube.com. Subscribe to my channel. Click on channels in the search engine. Put NFL Exporter for all of the above. Again, that's spelled NFLExporter. For Derek Shapiro, find him on Twitter at Derek Shapiro Show. Show is spelled SHO without a W. Facebook.com/Derek Shapiro. You will see a picture with Derek with Wyclef John. The call-in number to the show, 716-249-0552. Email address, NFLExporter@yahoo.com. Everyone have a safe week. Enjoy all of the action for this week's games as well as fantasy football. And I will see you right here next Tuesday, same time, 7 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. I am the NFL Exporter, signing off for the final wrap, 1100.